Welcome to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members
Teresa, Linda, and Annie,
are master gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature, or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Here's part one of our three-part retrospective series on pests and pathogens with Master Gardener volunteers Dede and Jackie.
Welcome to Garden Pests and Pathogens. I'm Dede Terns-Thorpe, and I'm here with
Jackie Hayden.
We're Columbia and Greene County Master Gardener volunteers, and today we'll be talking with you about diagnosing plant problems.
Diagnosing is a key to coming up with the correct control mechanism. And where do we start?
Well, first define the problem to determine if a real problem actually exists. Double-check normal plant characteristics to accurately describe the symptoms and signs for any abnormality. Next, we should look for patterns on more than one plant or plant species. If we see the symptoms on only a few plant species, it could be an issue with pathogens or insects.
And how would you describe pathogens?
That could be a fungal, a bacterial, or a viral disease. The location and the type of the damage are an important clue in determining any insect-caused damage diseases. Look for chewing, sucking damage, as well as leaf curling or puckering, galls or skeletonized leaves. A broad damage pattern would indicate physical, mechanical, or chemical factors that are at play. These could be caused by wind, hail, temperature, light, or moisture extremes, nutritional disorders, or pesticide and pollutant toxicities. At least half of all observed landscape problems are not caused by insects or diseases.
What if you only find damage in one of the two plants?
Well, if it's a one-time event, it would indicate a non-living cause. Or is it getting worse? If so, look for a living organism creating havoc with your plant. In addition to insects, leaf miners, borers, roots, feeders can all impact the health of your plants. Spider mites, slugs, rodents, and birds are also known to feed on plants, causing damage.
What if only one or two plants look affected?
A great question, Jackie. Many pests and diseases are plant-specific, but symptoms affecting more than one plant or genus may indicate environmental problems. By combining information, you can determine the probable cause and determine if corrective action is needed. For example, if you see all or a major portion of a tree, shrub, or plant dying, suspect an issue with the vascular system. This could be caused by a toxic chemical in the soil or an extreme temperature or moisture condition. A gradual decline could be caused by root rot or wilt disease. If scattered branches start to decline and gradually die, suspect a living organism such as a canker pathogen, a shoot blight, or a borer.
What if a branch or branches die off all of a sudden? Does this change the probable cause?
Another great point, and yes, if a branch dies suddenly or affected branches are concentrated on one side of the plant, suspect weather, animal damage, or chemical drift. Similarly, shoot dieback can be caused by freeze damage, as well as cracking or gurgling. A gradual decline of shoots with the retention of dead leaves could be caused by bacterial disease or pathogenic fungi. Leaf deformities can be caused by the drift from chemicals, heat, or moisture stress, as well as chemicals taken up through roots. Fungal leaf spot and stem rots are often tan to dark brown, and many are circular.
Do these bacteria penetrate healthy plants?
No, actually, bacteria do not actively penetrate healthy plant tissue, but rather they enter through wounds or natural openings. Bacterial leaf spots are often angular because they're limited by leaf veins. Infected tissue may appear oily or water-soaked and sometimes has a foul odor. Viral diseases affect individual host plant cells that spread cell to cell. They may also be spread by insects.
What is it you should look for?
Symptoms to look for include the lack of chlorophyll formation in normally green foliage, stunting or other distortion of leaves and flowers, or harmful rings or lesions.
What if you can't figure out the diagnosis? What should we do?
Okay, if you need help diagnosing your plant's problem, your local cooperative extension office can help. Bring us a sample like an affected branch. One that has some healthy as well as problematic leaves can aid in the diagnosis. Also take a picture of the plant's environment so we can see the environmental factors. We'll do our best to diagnose the issue and give you suggestions as to how to manage the problem. Hopefully these situations will never arise for you, but if they do, hope this helps you know what to look for to determine if you have a problem caused by a garden pest and needs to be managed, or whether it was just one of nature's flukes. Thanks for listening, and we hope this helped you with some of these pesty pests.
Have a great day, and we'll see you in the garden.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley.
Welcome back to Pests and Pathogens. I'm Dede Terns-Thorpe, and I'm here with
Jackie Hayden, Columbia, Greene County, Master Gardeners.
And today we're going to be talking about a very common garden pest, the beetle. 40% of all insect species are beetles, which can include plant feeders, predators, scavengers, and parasites. They're a member of the Coleoptera order, which consists of 400,000 species, including beetles and weevils.
Isn't there quite a range of different types of beetles?
The adults can range in size from 1/32 of an inch to more than 7 inches. Beetles can have a wide variety of antennae, from club to serrated, feathery, or thread-like. Their bodies, however, tend to have an exoskeleton, but they can be round or elongated, and their color is highly visible.
Do all species have wings?
They do. Yes, they do. They all have 2 pairs of wings. The front pair, a distinguishing feature, is hardened or leathery, while the hind wings are folded under the front wings. These are the ones that they may use to fly. Typically, beetles pass through 4 stages of development: the egg, the larva, the pupa, or the cocoon, and the adult. The larvae are commonly called grubs, and the pupa is something called a chrysalis.
How would you define that?
A chrysalis is the immature, inactive period between the larva and adulthood. Larva tends to feed voraciously once they emerge from their eggs. In this grub stage, they are soft-bodied with a head capsule and 3 pairs of legs on their thorax and no legs on their abdomen. Note that weevils lack legs on their thorax, which is one way to distinguish between a beetle and a weevil. Beetle larvae can be differentiated from other insect larvae by their hardened, often darkened heads, the presence of chewing mouth parts and spiracles, breathing spores along the sides of their bodies. Beetle-pollinated flowers are usually large, greenish, or off-white in color and heavily scented.
Can you give us an example?
Yes, the magnolia tree is a perfect example. Scents may be spicy, fruity, or like decaying organic matter. Beetles were most likely the first insects to pollinate flowers. Most beetle-pollinated flowers are flattened or dish-shaped, with pollen easily accessible. Beetles interact with their ecosystems in several ways: feeding on plants and fungi, breaking down animal and plant debris, and eating invertebrates.
How would you describe that?
Well, it would be any animal that lacks a backbone. Some species are serious agricultural pests, such as the Colorado potato beetle. Others, such as ladybugs, are beneficial by helping to control plant-sucking insects that damage crops like aphids, scale insects, and thrifts.
Can you tell us about the Colorado beetle?
Okay, Jackie, yes. The Colorado potato beetle is a destructive pest of potato plants. It lives on tomatoes, eggplant, as well as potato plants. It's quite small, about 3/8 of an inch long, with a bright yellow and orange body and 5 bold brown stripes along the length of each of its wings. The females are prolific and can lay over 500 eggs in a 4 to 5 week period. The eggs are usually deposited in small batches on the underside of host leaves. Once hatched, they feed on the leaves of their host plants.
Can it destroy potato fields?
The Colorado potato beetle is considered the biggest insect defoliator of potatoes. The species has evolved resistance to many different chemical insecticides, so crop rotation is the most important control mechanism. Rotation may delay or reduce the density of an infestation because the emerging adults can only disperse to new food sources by walking. Other controls may be used in combination with crop rotation. For instance, mulching a potato crop with straw early in the growing season may reduce the beetle's ability to locate potato fields, and the mulch creates an environment that favors the beetle's predators. The Japanese beetle is a species of scarab beetle.
What kind of beetle?
A scarab, or better known as a dung beetle. The adult measures a bit more than a half an inch in length and just under a half an inch in width. It has a copper-colored body and a green thorax and head. In North America, it's considered a pest on about 300 species of plants, including rose bushes, grapes, hops, cannas, birches, and linden trees, as well as corn, beans, strawberries, peppers, plums, pear, and peach trees, along with berry bushes like raspberry, blackberry, and blueberry. So the odds are very high that you will find them in your garden. The adult beetles damage plants by skeletonizing the foliage, which means that they eat only the leaf material between the veins and may also feed on fruit.
Where do they live?
During the larva stages, the Japanese beetles live in lawns and other grasslands where it eats the roots. When present in small numbers, the adult beetles may be manually controlled by using a soap water spray mixture, by shaking a plant in the morning hours and disposing of the fallen beetles, or simply by picking them off the leaves of the flowers, since the presence of beetles attracts more beetles to that plant. On crops such as squash, floating row covers can be used to exclude the beetles, but this may necessitate hand pollination of the flowers.
But what about the ladybugs? Aren't they helpful to the plants?
Yes, good point. Lady beetles, also known as ladybugs or ladybird beetles, are considered beneficial as both adults and larvae because they primarily feed on aphids. They also feed on mites, small insects, and insect eggs. There's over 450 species that can be found in North America. Some are native and some have been introduced from other countries. The adult lady beetles are small, round to oval, and dome-shaped. The most well-known have black markings on red, orange, or yellow forewings, but some are black. Many crops benefit from lady beetles. They are helpful for growers of vegetables, grain crops, legumes, strawberries, and tree crops. However, any crop that is attacked by aphids will benefit from these beetles. Because of their ability to survive on other prey when aphids are in short supply, lady beetles are particularly valuable natural enemies.
Do ladybugs live through the winter?
Yes, they overwinter as adults, often in groups along hedgerows, beneath leaf litter, under rocks, bark, and in other protected places, including buildings. Their tendency to overwinter in homes and other buildings, sometimes in large numbers, may make them a nuisance to some. Preventing the lady beetles from entering is the best approach to keeping them from becoming a household nuisance in fall and winter. Caulking exterior cracks and crevices before the lady beetles seek overwintering sites is the best way to keep them out. Lady beetles that enter wall spaces in the fall may remain there without entering living areas until they depart in spring to search for food. But some may become active on warm days in late winter or early spring and move into the living areas. Sweeping and vacuuming are effective methods for removing these beetles from living areas. Using insecticides indoors for control is not typically recommended. In the spring, the adults disperse in search of prey and suitable egg-laying sites. We could talk about beetles all day, but others that may be pests in your garden include the striped cucumber beetle, the viburnum beetle, the Asian longhorn beetle, and the asparagus beetle. Your local cooperative extension can help you learn how to identify and control these too. Just give them a call. Thanks for listening. This is Pests and Pathogens. And until next time, nature calls.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley.
Hi, and welcome to another segment of Garden Pests and Pathogens. I'm Dede Terns-Thorpe.
And Jackie Hayden.
Today we will shift our focus to a pest that affects many trees, the spongy moth. In February 2022, the Entomological Society of America adopted spongy moth as the new common name for the species Lymantria dispar, commonly known as the gypsy moth. The new name refers to the insect's distinctive sponge-like egg. The term gypsy is widely acknowledged as an ethnic slur and was changed to limit the dehumanizing effects of the former common name. The spongy moth is one of the more important forest pests in the Northeast. The spongy moth was introduced into North America in the late 1800s when specimens were accidentally released in Massachusetts.
Does it bother all trees?
Spongy moth caterpillars feed on most hardwood trees except for ash. They prefer oaks, but can also be found preying on poplar, birch, willow, and apple trees. When half-grown or larger, the larvae are likely to feed on evergreens. Unfortunately, as the number of spongy moth larvae in an area increases and their favorite food sources become depleted, you might find them feeding on ornamental trees and shrubs. A single defoliation can kill some evergreens, but usually it takes 2 or more defoliations to kill hardwoods.
So what do they look like?
Well, the adult female moths are mostly white with a wingspan of about 2 inches, while the male moths are light tan to dark brown with smaller wingspans, say just about 1.5 inches. The females are flightless, while the males are good flyers. The moths are found during the summer months, but usually they do not feed on foliage at that time.
How many eggs do they deposit, and where do they leave their eggs?
Female moth deposits about 300 to 500 eggs in a mass during the summer. These egg masses are about 1.5 inches by 3/4 inch wide, and they're covered with a dense mat of light-colored hairs. Look for them on tree trunks or on the underside of large branches. Current year's egg masses have a buff tan color and are hard and velvety to the touch, whereas the older ones are faded and softer to the touch as the eggs have hatched.
Where do the eggs overwinter?
Well, the eggs overwinter on trees, rocks, stumps, and crevices, or on buildings. The eggs hatch the following spring, and then tiny black caterpillars spin silken threads, which help them be dispersed by the wind. Then the destruction really begins. The caterpillars mainly feed at night and crawl down trees to seek shade during the day.
Do they have any distinguishing features when they are fully grown?
Well, the caterpillars are 2 inches long. They're slate-colored and hairy with 6 pairs of red dots and 5 pairs of blue dots on their back when they mature. They feed for about a month or 2 in the summer months until they poop or frost. Approximately 2 weeks later, adult moths emerge from the pupal stage. The male moths fly to the flightless females, usually on tree trunks, and that's where they mate. The females deposit egg masses shortly after meeting, and the cycle repeats itself. There is only 1 generation per year. Spongy moths can remain at low levels for several years, and then their numbers can rise with an outbreak every few years after several years of defoliation. The population collapses, and it's usually due to a viral disease. It will then remain at low levels until populations build back up and erupt again. What is the amount of defoliation and the resulting tree mortality are directly related to the percent of oak, the preferred host tree. Though pure stands on soft woods are practically immune to defoliation, hemlocks and pines are vulnerable when mixed with oaks. These softwoods, often found in the understory of hardwood stands, are much more likely to die after a single defoliation than the dominant trees. Note that it often takes several years to grow a full complement of needles, whereas hardwoods grow a full crown of leaves every year.
So what is the good news?
The good news is that larger pines often escape complete defoliation and they can survive. Healthy hardwoods generally require 2 or more years of heavy defoliation before they are killed. But remember, defoliation weakens the trees and increases the likelihood of attacks by fungi and other insects. Hardwoods with more than 50% defoliation will usually refold before fall.
Does this hurt the trees?
The energy required to generate these new leaves uses most of a tree's reserve that's necessary for growth the following year, so defoliated trees are more prone to winter injury, bad weather, especially drought, poor soil type, and low tree vigor also leads to tree mortality.
Does the tree die quickly?
Well, that's a good question. The tree may not actually die before 10 years. Among the hardwoods, oaks have the highest mortality rate because they are the preferred host and suffered the most defoliation. But their mortality depends on crown conditions, crown position in the forest canopy, and the species of oak trees. Chestnut oaks, black oaks, and white oaks are much more likely to die than red oaks. But are they weakened? Even light defoliation can substantially reduce the acorn production, which has a negative impact on wildlife. And many birds, including turkeys and deer, depend on them for food source, and the lack of acorns also reduces the natural regeneration of oak seedlings after several years of defoliation. Enemies of the spongy moth include rodents, birds, parasites, spiders, ground beetles, fungi, and viruses. Occasionally, weather will impact the spongy moth. Prolonged extreme cold, below minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, will kill most egg masses not covered by snow. A wet, cold spring or a late summer drought are detrimental to larvae, as well as an early summer.
Can the moths be totally prevented?
Well, none of the natural predators can prevent a spongy moth outbreak, but they do help maintain populations at lower levels and lengthen the time between outbreaks. So if you expect an outbreak, here's what you can do. There's 3 main management options depending on the type and value of the stand, as well as the vulnerability to mortality. Doing nothing is a reasonable option for many woodlot owners. Remember that red oak mortality is only 5 to 8%. Many owners are willing to accept the risk of tree mortality and the 5 to 6 year growth reduction that occurs. The second option is to harvest trees between outbreaks, but bear in mind that harvesting just prior to an outbreak or during an outbreak may cause higher mortality of other trees due to the stresses, secondary diseases, and increase the defoliation due to less food per acre.
What if you only have a couple of specimen trees?
If you only have 1 or 2 in your yard, you can consider crushing egg masses and using barriers to trap the caterpillars as they move up and down the tree to minimize the damage. If you have a large number of trees, however, this approach is not practical.
So what is the best option for this case?
It might be to simply maintain a healthy stand of trees. A well-managed woodlot is more resistant to damage from spongy moth outbreaks and other insect infestations. Proper thinning in advance of an outbreak can reduce death by removing the trees that are in poor health, which are most likely to die, and increasing the vigor of remaining trees. Get the advice of a professional forester to obtain sound advice on the best way to improve the health of your woodlot. Contact your local cooperative extension and they can help you locate a professional forester.
It's Jackie Hayden.
And this is Dede Terns-Thorpe. Thanks for listening.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our series on pests and pathogens with Dede and Jackie.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Powers and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreene.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at Columbia Greene mgb@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreene.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acre. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities